Hey, man. Oh, yeah, you're muted. Good. Phew. Thought it was me. Are you there?
No.
Yeah, you're there. All right. For the recording, you can see I have my Zoom face. Zoom. There you go. Not Zoom face. My Apple Vision outline already. So we had our meeting here initially, but since we wanted to record this little bit, we moved over to Zoom. It's a bit loud. I'm sorry. So what I don't know. I've been talking about it a million things, but we're currently talking about saving views in a large scale kind of a graph environment where, for instance, you have said, I want all the documents that Mark Anderson has written where he talks about spatial hypertext. A very simple thing that is everywhere, but in this context, when you get that, you can choose the layout in 3D spaces however you want, and then you can squish it and put it against the wall, wherever you want to save it in the environment. It stays environmental. And because of the metadata we've been talking about, where there is a large amount of self-knowledge in the document and how they connect, or rather how they point outwards, we should be able to run processes on this as well. So if Mark Anderson, for instance, writes a new document, that might appear as a shining object in there and so on. So we're just talking about different ways to spatialize, because reading a single document on the Vision Pro is so good. That job is done. We need to talk about using the space now. Would you agree that's a good summary? Adam?
Yep. By the way, your audio is a bit kind of voice cancelled. Do you have some AirPods Pro or something? AirPods? Oh, you have. Why is it so aggressive?
I will check my settings.
Nothing. Can't hear you.
It is a very loud environment, I'm afraid. So now it's on standard. Oh, yeah,
Okay. Let's go with the box
okay.
sound then. Isolation mode.
All right. So one of the things I thought a lot about is the idea of invisible scaffolding, where you cannot easily put a document anywhere. Yeah, we talked about this, like having a foreground scaffold and a background scaffold. So maybe in a concept like this, we use approximation of a kind of a box, like this is the 3D space for this, so that you can easily move the whole box around if you want as well. I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on making it more controllable?
Yeah, we should. My thoughts here is that we should certainly think about collections and subspaces quite quickly. That you have kind of work spheres. I'm just saying sphere, but it can be whatever. But spaces that you put inside your outmost working space. So you have a collection of documents. It could be a library collection, but it could also be the wall or the table or a space floating in space, but it's a kind of a confined space. It has limits, outer limits, like the frame in 2D. We have the outer, and I think that's very important, because we will at many points want to drag in several of those spaces. A library collection, all the spatial hypertext or XR texts in one box sphere. We want to have my current documents open. We may have, at one point, we may have a collaborative corner where we put documents in. At least in the future, we will have that. Maybe not in our project, but perhaps in our project as well, that we have a space and they have to live there at the same time. It will be unpractical to go from very big different big modes that you're only in your library without a table, so to say. And then you go to a table or a workspace without the library. That's unrealistic. We need to have both in view, I think. Perhaps not in the beginning, but we have to design that in mind, that we have collection, that we have spaces that work in, cultures or workspaces.
Yes, and we need a mechanism whereby whatever
So that,
document.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important what you're saying. We also need a mechanism whereby the frontmost document is communicated to the quote unquote system, so that if you really want to read that one document, you go into other software, whatever you've designated, and it is aware of this. You can read it in the Vision Pro natively on your laptop or on your Kindle, whatever it is. So you have the in and out capability, right?
Yeah, so that so it's kind of a cross-device selection, but it's a very special kind of selection that indicates that you want to read it. We could also imagine that it's not a single document, that you select a few of them, a small collection, make a small list basically that I want to read these 3 documents, so we don't get stuck being too singular-minded. Often we want to read 3 documents or skim 3 documents in a better kind of on an iPad or on an e-reader or on the laptop or whatever our preferred method is. So sending a small list with the open document foremost, so to say, it's a very, very important interaction, and it also we will use that metaphor in many different. We will also want that metaphor to when we send a reading list. If another colleague sends us such a list, it's kind of a primitive that we want, and many of the operating system primitives are very single file oriented. For example, when you have an iPhone, you have a share sheet where you can share a document, but it's just a single file. And that's kind of the wrong metaphor. Often you want to send a couple of files, for example, and then you have to go through a very convoluted way of zipping them up just for them to unzip them immediately to read them. So we should have the notion of a small collection that you send around, and that should be the kind of the default primitive.
We may want to think of it in terms of an RSS feed.
Yes, for some things, but the RSS feed is very temporal. I imagine that you want to group things right now into a unit, while the RSS feed is much more a kind of one at a time, that I send you a file, I send you another file, I'll send you another file. But what you want is kind of having, of course, your software can understand that they were sent in quick succession and collect them together interface wise. But I think the notion of having a unit, a frame around multiple things is very, very important and should be preserved. And RSS in itself doesn't preserve that, so then we need to add it inside RSS. RSS is mostly a discovery mechanism.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think what might be exciting then is to design a JSON wrapper that actually includes BibTeX for, to say what the documents are, just so someone can look at it and say that we've used a minimal amount of new formats. We've taken everything that exists and put it together. Because then we also get into namespaces, which will be interesting. How, I want to be able to subscribe to someone's view if they choose to make it public. Someone else would have a private view. So I think that, this is maybe it's because I finished my coffee, but I find that very, very exciting, because metadata is literally the blood that goes through the body of communication. So now we can imagine many more types of views, such as even subscribing to a thing like this from the local bookshop that knows you a little bit. So in the corner, instead of displayed in a knowledge way, they can have the covers of books, something coming up new. That could be, as Quest calls it, an augmentation, right? We can start thinking fun like that, maybe.
Yeah, and then we need that kind of both a feed that announces itself, or a system that announces, but also the collections that and also the collections themselves often need a touch of commentary. It's important to just having a list is not as valuable as having a list with the comment on why that list is relevant, and it could be just a word or a sound file, recorded sound file. So if I send you something, you get to a line of text or a voice recording. Here, Frode, here are the 3 documents on spatial hypertext. That's a very valuable thing that should be included with a list. A list has metadata as well, or data.
Yeah, now you're saying something super incredibly important. So without talking about politics, let's talk about climate change. I could imagine sending you a thing about the Atlantic conveyor, because it will impact Norway and Sweden if it stops working. I saw something in New Scientist. But to just send it in this mechanism in itself, you're absolutely right, without context, it's not as useful. So to provide multiple means of adding context, such as a simple audio file, which would be lovely, also other connections would be very interesting indeed. Sorry, the machine is going to talking. So I'm also thinking, okay, let me just talk about the current issue, because it's very relevant to this. So there's currently, for the future, there's currently 2 major wars going on in the world. One of them, Westerners tend to agree on. The other one is more contentious for some reason. So when having discussions around it, of course, it's mostly emotional, but there are points where you want to send a thing and you want to send it in context. And then say, this thing happened today, isn't it terrible? By the way, here are the numbers behind it, linking to a source of numbers, that kind of stuff. So you build up a knowledge web, not just a hotshot of, I don't agree with you.
Yep, and yeah, we really need that, and we need that commentary and qualifiers to say that what I'm looking at or what I'm pointing to in this document or in this context is exactly this, not everything and not the bad thing here, but I'm pointing to this. So that kind of pointing is very important. And we know that from even simple interaction, just sending links to people can be quite worthless sometimes, because you often have a thing in mind with that link, and
All
just
right,
sending
so
the link is not really telling half the story.
So let's design something now, just for fun. Probably should be thrown away, but let's imagine we're reading a single page of a document, because it's a nice space to, or double, really doesn't matter. So there are 4 sides to a document, and we're reading it in XR, of course. So let's say that we reserve the left-hand side to list its citations, and the right-hand side what cites it, just like we have in what you've already made, right? Then in the Z dimension, there are earlier versions of this document, just like in Time Machine. Then we have the interesting thing of above and below. Below might be, this is what my community has.
So let's say, when you say this document, are you imagining a paper or things you've written yourself or made yourself?
I am
For the time history thing.
anything. And I'm thinking about, to elevate the discourse a little bit, let's think about them as hypercard pieces or academic documents or your own notes. So it could be any referenceable, addressable, and contextualizable knowledge object, right?
For your hypercards, I imagine there will be a version history, but for the published paper, you may never see that because they only published the final version and not the messy draft in between. But just for, yeah. But
Oh yeah,
please continue. Sorry.
No. I agree. That's definitely a thing to imagine. Now, imagine if underneath it there are let's say both you and Brenda sent me this PDF originally. So you sent it with context. So both your context will be listed under it. So I know where it came from. So that could be really, really good. Like, I want to see all the documents Brandel said were great. Oh, here they are. That's kind of stuff. So now we have one more dimension, and that is on top of the document. On top of the document is where we may start doing the kind of exploded or X-ray view more, where we have access to information about the particular author, maybe AI analysis. That can be kind of your control center, control panel for custom things, if we reserve the other three, just for the sake of one way of visualizing it. Oh, by the way, not sure if you've seen, but Andrew has now made the prism work for the control panel. Yes, so that's cool.
It looked. I haven't tried it, but it looked. It looked workable from the. It was nice and good animations there, and I think it's a good start to actually have some sliders and buttons and the basics that we're used to. Of course, they could be better in the future or more XR-y, like multi-dimension, but having those are an excellent starting point.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really cool. I didn't think he was working on that, but yeah, it's cool. So I'm now wondering if one of those three sides could be in charge of views. So if you're just working normally, ideally, in our environment, and you haven't thought about views at all, and then it's like, hang on, the way things are now, I like it. So you twist it up and underneath, name this view. And it just takes whatever information is available and saves it. And then you can shove it off somewhere, right? Or make a new view where you type in criteria for a view. So that's how you have the normal control, view control, and then you have like external settings or something. What do you think?
In a way, my thinking is a bit different when it comes to object settings for objects. So let's say we have settings for the world, how the world behaves, very general, like kind of the brightness of the pass through. Imagine if we have that, and perhaps font sizes you like and reading distances. So in general, your user preferences and the world settings that you want. I want to block out the world and so on. And then we have settings for collections, kind of settings for your library. It could be in the view on a wall, or part of your view could be the library and part of the view could be your current project or current reading, for example. Could be. But there is a setting for the library and there is a setting for the workspace and there is a setting for the whole room. I think in general it's good to visually connect the settings to the object a bit and not disconnect them too much. I personally, I am not a big fan of Apple's way of doing it in iOS, where you have settings in a very different place from the app. And so, to me, it's a big disconnect because sometimes you could change things in the app, but most often time it's hidden somewhere in the preferences, and there's such a disconnect to jump to a very different place to change the basics. So I would like to have and it works to have them disconnected, but I really would at least have a visual connection in some way.
What about if it's a document type object? Do you have an interaction to flip it around? So you have settings on the back or something?
Yeah, I don't think we need that because we have so much space. So we can see the settings and the effect or the result side by side or above or below, but I would just visually connect them a bit. So that's my way of thinking right now. Of course, the actual hand interaction needs to be closer. If the object is far away, the hand interaction needs to be closer. So we have to, but opening it, yeah, we have to think about it, but I want them visually connected a bit so we know that this setting is for that part of the room. This setting is for everything, and this setting is just for the font size of this small little document that I hold in my hand. So we have a clear what goes to what setting goes to what is really important.
It's really, really wonderful to have these discussions with you. And this is an example of maybe putting a pin in it and having a proper group discussion, because the opportunities here are vast. And we very fully agree that setting shouldn't be away from what you're setting. That's a bit weird.
But that can be solved, and we could even start with kind of having the panel, but just having the panel pointing to the objects you're setting. If you have a panel close by, just having kind of a visual connection between them, so we know that we're setting that wall on the side could be enough for now. The question is where you open, how you open that setting. Is it from the object to your panel, or is it from the panel kind of going to the object, or like pointing out the object? So that could be try to see what we can do and what we like to have. But my gut instinct is kind of starting the setting from the object, and then it flies to you or like connects with your panel is visually or intuitively, for me, a more natural way that you start the setting from the object and then it appears in the control panel.
I agree with the emotions there. I'm going to try something here. This is so annoying. So some of the things going on. Yeah, I fully agree on that, and that should definitely be our discussion. Now, when it comes to which academic to augment, I really think it should probably be us. So we make an explicit declaration, but also I really want to be in a situation where, not necessarily through using my Mac tools, many of them don't, like Fabian doesn't use Mac, but somebody like Rob should be able to write a statement on whatever, and it enters our world in the manner that we discussed, with the metadata discussed, so that it is accessible to be viewed and connected richly. Because if we manage to do that and demonstrate that, it will be so amazing that I think it really helps communicate our approach to others. I mean, just imagine this.
In order to pull that off, we need to have a system that works on all the operating systems, and so realistically we can't get people to use a very specific software like Author and Reader. Even if you love it, people will have reasons. Most people are on PCs, for example, and some are
Exactly.
on Linux,
Yes.
and some are not allowed to install software. We have so many situations that we can't really realistically, people can't be expected to have a specific software. Perhaps web software is general enough to do that plumbing, or have a basic view, and then you have specialized high quality views in your app and in Vision Pro native and so on. But the basics needs to be we need at least a bare bones version that works with web tech, I think, in order to pull this off in this scope.
Oh, I completely, utterly agree. I can imagine a WordPress looking, not powered, but WordPress looking kind of a front end where Rob, for example, would paste his thought and just checks, maybe write a title and then click a button and it's gone. As far as he's concerned, but it produces what we need on the other side. So it has to be that way. You can't even, of course, manually add visual matter to a Word document just by typing it, which is ridiculous. But we could. It's been so many years. This notion of somebody says something with a little bit of context, and then it just disappears. And then Vannevar Bush, way back in 1945, talked about how it's easier to add to knowledge than to access it. And I think that, excuse me, hang on. I think it's a law of the physics behind it. I think the law of physics is it takes less energy to make information than it takes to organize information. And that is
Yeah.
something we can address by making the information have enough knowledge, enough self-knowledge to self-organize.
Yeah. Perhaps not knowledge, but it is information for it. It sounds like it's alive, or but at least have good identifiers, so it can be identified by humans and machines. Yeah, of course we agree, but it's good to systems are seldom intelligent themselves. They can yeah. So, and of
When,
course, not documents are stupid. They don't have intelligence. They have identifiers and metadata and so on. But yeah,
when I use the term self-knowledge, um, I mean that in a very specific and loose sense. For instance, cells in our body have self-knowledge. None of them are clever, but they do know how to connect to other cells to get things done. So I mean, let's put it another way, that there is enough, okay, this is closer to what Vint wrote in his,
yeah. But cells have a agency, some sort of not agency, but they have a machinery inside themselves. Documents have no machinery inside themselves. They have it
hang on,
externally. Yep.
hang on, this is really important. This is a great discussion. Cells without water have nothing, right? So they
Yep.
have to be part of an environment to have something. Same with the document. The document in and of itself, of course, is nothing. However, a cell in a liquid environment with other cells, they have enough expressible information about themselves, meaning they can communicate with others, that emergent properties can arise. I think it is very similar with documents. If documents have enough information inside them that is accessible from the outside, the digital environment is kind of like water. It is the connective tissue. So if we really provide that, then interesting things can happen.
Yeah, I think I think we agree in practice here, and but we need to know
It's just
the machinery for a cell. Much of the machinery to interact with other cells is inside the cell, but for document, it's actually the reading software is more akin to the cell here. And it has information, DNA. The documents are more like DNA pieces, and inside the cell, and the reading machinery is a cell, in my view here.
I
Perhaps.
don't question. I absolutely agree with your view. I just think it's fun to be a bit provocative and stretching it a bit.
Yep,
There is no
yep,
reason
good.
there's no reason a document shouldn't have code, right? Even full code. An entire program is, of course, also a kind of document. So, what is, of course, interesting is the environment in which these things exist. So, for us to look this up is just hugely fascinating and maybe important. So, yeah, I think we're fully on the same page. Page. Bacteriophage. No, that's phage, not phage.
So I want to backtrack to the kind of exploded view on top, the object, the hypercard object, the history, and so for PDFs that we will be we PDFs are quite voluminous, or we have many pages, so it's not a single card. So we have both the notion of the document, which is, let's say, 10 pages for an academic document, or 500 for a book, but there is this notion we need more space. So that's something I run into when testing things here with documents. Hello. Oh, something. You dropped out with audio, but tell me when you're ready. Now I hear something.
Yeah, sorry, my mother's been unwell the last few days, so I had to answer.
Yeah,
But
no problem.
help with the washing report. Call Emily. Because Emily can't deal with that right now. Okay, please repeat. I'm so sorry about the interruption.
So let's see, where were we? Yeah, but that we have the documents have many pages, from everything from 1 page to 500 pages, but let's say 10 pages for many of the things or 20 pages for the academic documents. So the notion of 1 page, and we have many pages, and how do we lay out many pages while still keeping the directions like up, sides, down, and so on. It could just be that the pages are spread horizontally, and information is attached to each page above them. But then we have the idea of the document as a whole, where is information about the document as a whole, as opposed to the individual pages. And if we want annotations on the page, on a specific page, where do they live?
So you can see this, right?
Yeah.
So just a thought, because we have 3 sides of the prism. Imagine when you flip to this side, it refers to the document closest to you. So currently references on the left, cited by on the right, just like we have in the middle 2-page spread. So all the sides here, you can click to change what's shown. So maybe you don't want to see cited by and references, but you want to have a full open document. You have a quick way to click what is shown on different areas, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but that's mostly the interface. What would it? A page, if we want to have a spread of multiple pages, how does that relate to annotations for a specific page and to an exploded view? Can you have an exploded view when you have multiple pages up? Are they each exploded, or is a kind of main focused page exploded, and or can you see annotations on other pages from a distance? That is actually spatializing it more. So you could see that, oh, I did a comment, or I annotated page 5, and you can see that from a distance, so to say. That would be very useful, I think, using the space. So you don't have to hunt inside your pages to find information.
So imagine this then, messy here with a bad, you may not take any time to fix it, but imagine in the middle, you have 2 options, right? So it says, think of the annotations and so on in terms of layers. So you can choose what kind of layers are visible on your 2-page spread, or 100-page spread, or 1-page spread.
And do you imagine that the layers are shown for all pages then?
Yeah, I think it would be for the document as it is open.
So all pages will be annotated. Let's say we have 10 pages open. All annotations are visible, perhaps at a distance a bit, because you have one page in front of you and the others are a bit further away in some dimension.
So, yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then so all I'm trying to do is, with this notion, is because a document is rectangular, at least by default.
Yep.
If we have a rectangular kind of a control area like this, then also with exploded document view, I really felt that is for the whole document. But of course, it can be from individual image. But in that case, we would have to select it, that one image, and then we'd have to find a way just like you said, to provide the controls as close to the document as possible, right?
So let's say we have an exploded view. Would that be kind of different people pointing to different pages? If we have a spread of 10 pages and we have a star constellation with names and some concepts, would those stars kind of point towards different pages and sections on pages then? Or is it that kind of exploded view, or is it the actual
Well,
contents?
this is what we need to discuss as a wider group, of course. Brilliant questions. My initial impressions are that the exploded view is taking the document and treating it like an engineering diagram that's isometric somehow. The annotations and other layers would probably be closer to what we're talking about. So this simplified little dialogue here would have to initially be experimented with. And of course, most of the controls wouldn't actually be here. There'd be more gestural and in the document. Yeah.
So, Frode, I have to go pretty soon. Have lunch and
It's
so
later for you.
yeah, it's late for me. I need to have lunch to run away after that. But let's. We have some first ideas here now, and if you do something that you present for the group, we could continue the discussion with the group because it's really quite good group discussion to see, especially when it comes to spreads. And I think it's such a natural notion for PDF that we have 10 pages. What do we want from those pages? And also with Andy's kind of a native app.
Absolutely. I will give a brief summary of this, but I'm going to stop recording now.